Greetings, my name is Jake, and doing something a little different today. First of all, I'm making a video, which is interesting, but I like creating palette swaps for Fire Emblem characters like these here, and I've gotten a couple people asking how I do it, and so I thought I'd put together a little video with something that's fairly easy to, I think it's going to be fairly easy to do, just to demonstrate how I do it. So I've got it all set up here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give Dimitri the color palette of Perry here. Couple reasons for that. I think it'll give us gradients. It'll give us, light to dark, dark to light. I also just think there's really something to the two of these. I think Intelligent System is trying to create a new archetype with these two, the Perry archetype. Because I mean, if you think about both of them, they're both nobles who witnessed the murder of a parent, and witnessing that drove them insane, and their insanity manifests in gleeful psychotic murder. They both have a covering over their right eye. They both have lances as their primary weapon, but they also use swords or have a proficiency in swords in Dimitri's case. So there's just a lot of parallels between the two of them. They're very similar. They both have, character arcs that are dependent upon supports and therefore undercut any sort of narrative composition for any linear story. Just a lot of similarities. So I use paint.net to make palette swaps. I'm sure there's plenty of other. I'm sure that Clip Paint Studio. You could do very similar things. Photoshop could probably do similar things, but paint.net is free. Don't go to paint.net. Don't type that in your address bar. It'll take you somewhere else. You need to go to getpaint.net, or just Google search it. So what you want to do is you want to have two layers to begin with. You want to have the character that you're applying the palette to and the character you're taking the palette from. So just got those two here. And basically what I do is so let's just start with the eye, something nice and small and simple to demonstrate. So I'm going to zoom in here, and I'm just going to use the color picker to get the color of Perry's eye. And then we're going to go over to Dimitri's eye, but we're not going to do that straight away, because what you can do is you can just isolate it and change the hue and do it by eye. It's very difficult to do it that way. So what I do, pun unintended, is I just select the area, I copy it, and I paste it into a new layer. Then I remove all saturation. So now we've got a layer here with a desaturated eye area. Then we're going to make a new layer on top of that, and we're going to set the blend mode to overlay. Again, I don't know how this translates to other programs, but this is how it works in paint.net. And now, using the paint bucket, I've got the overlay of that. Now, it's not quite the same, you see. It's a lot brighter in Dimitri's eye because his eye is a lighter color than Perry's. So we've got the color layer and then the desaturated layer underneath. And you want to select the desaturated layer underneath. Go to contrast and brightness. And you kind of got to play this by eye. Just mess around with it because we need it to be darker. So let's move it down in 10 increments. That's not going to be enough. 40. That's looking better. And then I usually adjust the contrast as well to make it look similar. Now, obviously, these are different art styles, so it's not going to be exactly the same, but you want it to be similar. So I think increase in contrast, let's try 20. No, that didn't really work. I did the opposite of what I wanted to do. 40. No, that's definitely not working. This needs to be darker. And let's reduce the contrast. That's better. That's better. What about negative contrast? Does that work? Just play around. Ooh, that does look better. yeah, play around with it. Don't be afraid to experiment. You can always go back. You can always adjust things. Yeah. And it doesn't have to be perfect. A lot of this stuff you're not really going to notice once everything's done. So I think that looks good. Minus 60 on the brightness, minus 20 on the contrast. So then we're going to merge the two layers together. So now we have an area of the eye a different color. But we've got all this extraneous bit. So just going to take the brush here, the eraser. I like using a brush size of 10. I find that works with the resolutions that most Fire Emblem artwork is at. Also, using the Pitfalls wiki is the best place for official art like this. They have extensive volume. A lot of them are PNGs with no, in fact, most of them are PNGs with no background. Very easy to work with. Occasionally you'll run into like minor things, but very good source of things here. So we just use the eraser, go around and just take off the extraneous bits. And you know, there's a bit of the eye here that's light. So we need to get that as well. We'll reduce our brush size down to 3. 3 will be good. Just get in there. Yeah. And again, it doesn't have to be perfect. You know, this is a couple pixels that when you zoom out, you're not going to notice. And on most sites, there's going to be JPEG compression. So you've got a bit of leeway there. But that's the fundamentals of how I do it. And you've got the same color there, which is nice. So then when I'm done, rename the layer and save often. And just keep going with that. So let's start with the armor, or go to the armor next. So one thing you'll notice about Fate's portraits is they've got this kind of weird filter on them. So it's a little difficult to find what the actual color would be. But again, it doesn't have to be perfect because you're going to correct this. You're going to correct this manually. And when it comes to a big piece of armor, you can use the wand, but I find the wand is very difficult to use. So instead, I use the lasso tool. And I just select everything, go around the outside. You want to get too much, not too little. You want to make sure you've encompassed everything. And just go around, capture all of the armor. Again, you don't have to worry about making mistakes. You can always correct it. Don't worry about it. Just get along the outside of everything. This takes time, but you're going to save the time going this way than you would. I find it's easier to use this than to use the wand and then to correct the magic wand selecting things. Just go along the outside. Just get all the edges. That actually might be different. That's actually looks like cloth. So we'll just get this here. Good. Again, you can cut out stuff like this. Doesn't have to be crazy. You're gonna do it manually later. There's a bit of blue there, which is very interesting. I never noticed that before. Which is neat. You always get to find, sometimes you find really neat stuff. Like the heroes artwork for Minerva, at least as listed on the Pitfalls wiki, is, actually, is that cloth there? That might be cloth there. That is, yeah. So just use Alt instead, and now you're cutting away from it. Good. Actually, that cut way too much. There we go. Collar looks to be the same, so let's just get that there. Anyway, as I was saying, on the heroes artwork for Minerva, there's sections that are not complete opacity. and I don't know if that's part of the Pitfalls wiki or anything, but you're always going to find things. Like right here, we've got the blonde color bleeding over the edges, which, you know, in some ways is very reassuring, because if you make tiny mistakes like this and no one noticed the tiny mistakes on this official artwork, then they're not going to pick up on little things you do. So you really don't... Oops, I did it again. Speaking of mistakes, that's all cloth. That's not part of the chest piece. Just going to go around and get all of this. That's not part of it. That's something different. Okay. And that's all metal. I guess the gloves... You also kind of need to make judgment calls. Yeah, the gloves are something different. So let's actually... It's kind of difficult to tell sometimes. Again, any mistake can be corrected. So let's get in there. There's a little bit there. And... nope, that's part of it as well. Make sure we get all of it. Excellent. Okay. All right. Again, doesn't have to be perfect. And that's weird that it's blue. You can also compare stuff to official artwork of other poses, so that you can find out what is part of the armor and what is not. Okay. That looks like it's all armor there. I don't know how well that will show up in video, but that's how that goes. Okay. Fill in the middle section. One nice thing is that as you've filled more up, you don't need to be this precise because you'll have additional layers. But that looks like it's all part of the armor. So, same thing as before. We're going to copy that, paste it into a new layer, remove the saturation, add another layer on top of it, overlay, and fill with the color. So because this is darker than Perry's armor, we're going to need to brighten it instead of... oops. Well, that's a step I forgot to do. So let's go back to background layer, get rid of that. Yep. All right. So since Perry's armor is a lighter color than Dimitri's, we need to play around with the desaturated layer underneath, and it's gonna have the same settings. We don't want that, so let's just get rid of that for now. So let's try 20. That looks better, but you can see here that it also lightens the dark lines. So let's increase the contrast a bit. I usually find that like a 2-to-1 ratio or a 1-to-2 ratio is good, but I think we're going to need a bit more. So let's try 20. 20 looks a bit harsh. Let's try 15. Maybe a little brighter. 25, 20. That looks okay. What I do think I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the color layer, the top layer, and I'm going to increase the saturation a little bit. Let's try 115. Let's try 120. Yeah, it's a little more. Yeah. Because again, you're picking, when you pick at the colors, you actually notice that there's a lot of different, every pixel is kind of a little bit different. So you kind of got to adjust for that by looking at it. But I think that's good. I think that's good. Okay, so now we've got this whole layer here, same as before, we're just gonna, actually, is that part of, I think that's part of it. Just gonna go to brush size, oops. Okay, this is a good demonstration. I missed some of the armor here, but we can fix that. So go back to the background layer, just pick up some more, copy, add it into a new layer on top of it, opacity, fill in the space, make the same hue adjustment. I find it's helpful to write that down sometimes if you think you're going to be making mistakes. And brightness contrast. And there's a little bit, but I think that'll work out all right. Yeah, that's good. Okay. All right. So then go along the outside. Typically when you've got something like this, you can tell where it's going to be because it's a little darker. This section is darker than the armor was, so that picks up when you color everything. Go along the outside. You want to leave more or leave too much rather than take too much. It's because it's very easy to correct. Needing to erase more, it's more cumbersome to have to add more back in. So always err on the side of having too much. Get the brush smaller so it can get in those small areas there. That's looking good. And yeah, just go around the outside, erasing everything. All this excess. And I think I'm gonna do a bit of a time lapse just to speed this up. And there we go. So there's the armor in that color. So obviously that took quite a bit of time, but the nice thing is as you keep going, things get easier because you filled out more of the space. You've got a different layer here. Let's just change that to armor white. I know it's not exactly white, but serves well enough as a function here. So we've got this blue section here, and let's change that to the same color as Perry's gold here. So let's find a spot. Yeah, that seems good. You don't want it to be too bright. You don't want it to be too dark. You want it to be kind of representative of the whole color here. So then, if we select this area, again, you can be kind of messy, especially, you can actually be very messy on places you've already been to, because if we then do that, it's a layer underneath, and we make the adjustment there, add a layer on top, put it on overlay, fill the area, and we're going to need that to be brighter. select the layer underneath, brighter, and definitely a lot more contrast. We want a lot of contrast on this one because you want contrast for metal, so it'll shine. Probably gonna have to fix the saturation on that again. That's not too, not that much though. Let's try 40-40. Oops. No, it needs to be brighter. 60. There we go. That's looking better. That's looking better. Let's try 60-60. Nah, I like 60-50 better. Okay. So now we've got a nice gold section there. Merge the two layers together, and you notice the edges of where we already have been are clean, which is why you really want to go through those sections very neatly, because they're not just the borders for what you're doing, they're the borders of what comes next. So clean those up, and this will take a much smaller amount of time, not only because it's a smaller area, but because it's mostly done. Get in there, get that. And you don't have to worry about erasing what you've already done because that's on a different layer, which is why you keep different layers like that. And there we go. There's a whole bit that we just did very quickly. I could do the blue of the cloak the same color. I don't know if I want to do that, but I can if I need to. So armor, gold. Perfect. So now I want to take a look at the hair, because the hair is going to introduce two new things, dealing with the opacity, and also because we're working with Perry, because she and Dimitri are just so similar, we're going to do a gradient. So we've got the blue here, but we also need to get the pink from the end of her hair. Oh, it looks like that looks good. So you want to have that both of those set. So very quickly, let's just select Dimitri's hair. And hair is very tricky because it's often very messy. But we want to get the eyebrow as well. Actually, we may not want to because of how the gradient may work out, but just get around it. This is probably going to be another lengthy time sensitive section. We don't need the eye patch. We're not doing that. Yeah, that's good to start with. Maybe cut out some of the ear. We'll clean that up later. And then with your magic wand, you want to, with 50%, to start with, you just want to isolate. Actually, I think we can go a bit higher on the tolerance level, so we pick up more of the background. Let's try. No, let's keep it at 60. Keep it safe. Keep it at 60, and just get rid of the blank space. That looks good. So, copy, paste into new layer. Lower the saturation, add a new layer on top, overlay, get very used to that. And the interesting thing about Perry's hair is that it is only when the hair gets very long. So it's in the pigtails, it's not in the bangs. But Dimitri doesn't have that. He just has his hair all together. So we're gonna go to a gradient. I think we'll just do a linear gradient. We can also try a radial, but I think linear is going to be better. And something like that looks good. Now we have to darken this, just like we did with the eye. So select the layer underneath, go to your brightness and contrast. No, we don't want to increase the brightness. Oh, That's too much edge, even for Dimitri. Yeah, that doesn't look good enough. 60. No, we need to go darker than that. Let's try negative contrast. Yeah, negative contrast is definitely going to work out here. So, yeah, that looks pretty good. Yeah, I think that's good. Okay. So, merge those two together. And when you're dealing with a border here, what I like to do is I go back to the background layer, back to the magic wand, increase the tolerance even more to the point where it starts bleeding on just a little bit. So that's too much there. So then what you're going to do is you're going to go to your new layer, which is in this case the hair. You're going to cut, paste into a new layer, change the opacity to half, and then merge it back down. And what you've done is all these sections here. See, that doesn't look too good. We'll have to cut that out. But along the border, you've got it colored, but you've got it partial opacity, and that will make your edges look softer as you're going through it. So I think I'm going to do another time lapse here as I clean up all of the little strands and get into all the nooks and crannies around here. And I'll see you on the other side. All right, that went pretty smoothly. I've gotten really, I don't know if I've gotten really good at cleaning all this up, or it just worked out that way. So there's the hair, nice gradient. It leads to a bit of weird stuff here, but I think it works overall. And thankfully the eyebrows worked, so that's good. So let's keep with the face for the moment, and let's match the eye patch to this here. I think that'll be good. Get all around that. And because we've cut so much out for the hair, this is going to be a very easy process. The zero saturation does nothing to that. I might even try, let me take a look here. Because I typically use overlay as my blend mode. Let's see if multiply does not work in this instance. Okay. Okay, that's fine. So that's not bad. that's good. I like that. I think that's good. All right. I mean, there is an argument for leaving the eye patch alone, not bothering with it, since, you know, it's an eye patch. But I try to match as many things as possible. So let's get around the outside there. Again, not going to take very long. And as you're erasing, you're filling back in the darkened edge that you've kind of covered up. So be careful along those edges there. Yeah, I think that looks good. I actually don't think it looks good, but it matches, and that's the important bit. Yeah, you know what? I actually think I am going to erase that. Oops. Even though it doesn't fit with her colors, I think it just simply looks better. Yeah, definitely not going to worry about that. So now we come to an interesting bit where, you know, most of it's done, but you need to make decisions about what color is going to go where. So I think what I'm going to do is, I think we're going to use her collar as a clue for his cloak. So we'll get that. Oops. Make sure you're on the right layer. That color there. And we're going to apply that to the upper layer, and then the lighter one's going to be in the outside. So that's going to look pretty similar overall, but I think it'll be okay. So and this will probably be the last really difficult bit because of all these little corners and everything. And I'm going to select that. I'm going to change it. Well, actually, I'm going to select it in a time lapse, come back, and show you the color changing process because I think that will be informative. All right, so I've selected the cloak here. Let's do the usual thing. That's going to do nothing. Yeah, changing the saturation is not going to do anything on something that already doesn't have any color on it. But, and see, that barely does anything. So let's take a look here, see what we can do. We're going to probably have to increase the contrast a lot to compensate. Not that much. And that looks okay. It's not quite the same as Perry's, but I think the point comes across. So yeah, let's do that. And I think we're going to bump up the saturation on this top layer here. Let's try 125. Yeah, that makes it look a little better. So that's the sort of thing you need to do when you're changing from a light color to a dark color. It doesn't look perfect. In fact, I think I'm gonna, now that this is together, I'm gonna select, I don't normally have to do this, but I'm gonna select these bits specifically right here because there's some compression coming through. And maybe not that. We'll cut that out. That's fine. But we've got some very stark borders here because we upped the contrast so much on things that weren't all that different to begin with. Maybe a little down here. This is not something I normally have to do, but when you're changing things from one extreme to another, yeah, let's... Ooh, I don't want to include those, though. It's going to look a little awkward. What the hell did I do here? Oops. Get all this stuff. All these rough borders here. Oh! I hate when that happens. All these rough borders. Yeah, that's pretty rough. In here too, looks good. And here's all messy, so let's get that as well. Yeah, that's all JPEG compression there. Okay. Yeah, there's some more over here. That looks good. Get this here. Get that. Oops. Get that there. Okay. Now what I'm going to do with all of this, I'm going to copy that into a new layer. And I'm going to go to... I'm going to do unfocus. Maybe not unfocus. Maybe Gaussian blur? Gaussian blur. Put it up to 4, maybe 5. 7. 7 looks good. And that just smoothed out the edges a little bit. So we'll paste that back onto the layer it's already on. There's still a little bit that's rough, but... And like that's not perfect. The edges around the hair aren't great, but this is actually kind of a mess as well. Let's get this too. But hey, that's the price for changing colors like this. And that's sometimes something you have to do when you're moving from one character who has a very different color scheme than the one you're taking from. Let's get up in there. A bit more in there. That's pretty rough there. That's pretty rough. Yeah. And then I think we can just do it again. Yeah. No need to make another layer, just repeat the blur. Yeah, so that's good. That's good. I like that. I like that a lot. Okay, so now, gotta cut more out, so see you in a bit. And there we go. There's the, oops. There's the cloak there. And that's basically the whole process. I mean, there's a bit left to go. And what's left is kind of just decision making. Like, obviously, I've decided that this outer part of the cloak is going to be that light color there. I think something unique I have the option to do is I'm going to make this blue cloak the color of this here. Probably going to keep these. I don't even know what these are. These black hooks. Not sure. I think I'll make them the same gold that I did this little cutout here. And then the rest is just going to be a nice black to fit that. So, yeah, that's the process here. I'm going to do another time lapse of it. But yeah, that's the whole process. That's how I make palette swaps, and hopefully I've given you enough of an understanding to make your own. And I encourage you to find characters that that you like or that have some connection either within their own games or across games, and just have fun. Maybe you want to take I don't know, like the distinctive colors of Camilla and put them on a character that doesn't dress like Camilla does. There's a lot of different things you can do. You could even take inspiration from other sources. You don't have to be restricted to Fire Emblem. But yeah, so one last time lapse, and then I'll show myself out. And there we go. One psycho killer, qu'est-ce que c'est? I hate myself for that joke. Anyway, so we're done with Perry because we've got a new one. And then we can just cut that down to the original canvas size, which I happen to know was 180 all around. And then I always save it with all of the individual bits. And then we can push it all down. And now we've got a single layer for our beautiful Perry Dimitri. He looks fabulous. I mean, there's going to be some rough spots, but nothing that you would notice if you didn't watch the video. So yeah, that's how you do a palette swap. And let's save that as its own unique thing. So thank you for joining me. Hopefully this has given you a good look at how I put stuff like this together. Hope you enjoyed, and have a nice day.